Edgardo, are we ready to go?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen, depending on which corner of the world you are connecting from today. My name is Igor Stefanovic, and I'm the Technical Coordinator of Accessibility at UNWTO at Ethics, Culture, and Social Responsibility Department. I wish you all a very warm welcome to this webinar. A special thanks goes to those chipping in today in their late night hours when they should be sleeping. Thank you very much for the effort. Last Friday, we celebrated the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, which clashed with our General Assembly here in Madrid. This event today is connecting to that day of 3rd of December because it's aimed at raising the awareness of the importance of universal accessibility within our sector, which is tourism. It is a very timely event as we are undertaking our recovery process and we need to keep the inclusion and the accessibility on top of our rebound agenda. Persons with disabilities and specific access requirements were excluded from many information channels and decision-making processes of relaunching the tourism after the crisis. Many new barriers have been created. We have all witnessed that, whether we are end users or not, whether we have disability or not. We are here today to send a clear message on why accessibility for all matters. We are partnering today with the ONCE Foundation, the European Network for Accessible Tourism, and the Spanish Association for Standardization. UNWTO is so grateful today to have Marriott and Push Adventures representing the industry, the private sector, is speaking at our accessibility events for the first time. We also have experts from Accessibility Simplified and Turismo de Portugal joining us today. UNWTO partners are really thrilled to have participants from all over the world connected today. It's an honor to have you all on board as our audience. We have the interpretation services from English into Spanish and vice versa. Our partners from the ONCE Foundation have kindly facilitated the subtitling and captioning service today, as well as the sign language interpretation in Spanish, thanks to the IT support team also provided by UNWTO. Ahora quisiera dar una bienvenida especial a todos nuestros participantes hispanohablantes, ya que sabemos que tenemos a muchas personas apuntadas de los países de América Latina y España que alberga la sede de la OMT. Para escuchar la interpretación, pulse por favor el canal para el español, donde el globo en el fondo a la derecha de la pantalla. El subtitulado inglés va directo todo el tiempo porque se considera que la mayoría de la gente hablará en inglés, pero si quieren ver el subtitulado en español, hay que pinchar transcripción en directo. Es también una pequeña señal, es un símbolo que se encuentra al lado del globo en el fondo a la derecha. Por favor, mantengan las cámaras apagadas si no son ponentes y también el sonido en off para no interrumpir los servicios de accesibilidad. Al final del evento habrá un corto espacio también para las preguntas de los oyentes. Y without any further ado, I will switch to English again. Let me please introduce you to Marina Diotalevi, who is the head of Ethics, Culture and Social Responsibility Department, a department that also encompasses accessibility. Marina is the longest serving official at UNWTO. She has been working on these issues for decades, and she will also deliver her introductory remarks today. Thank you, Marina. Over to you.
Thank you, Igor. And today I would like to start with a question. Why accessibility? Universal accessibility in tourism is about human rights and access of all people with or without disability to tourism infrastructure, products, and services. We all have different abilities, and it is the duty of our sector to cater to our requirements. It is a moral and in many countries also a legal obligation to ensure everyone's right to leisure and tourism. Accessible tourism is about millions of users. More than 15% of the world population lives with some form of disability. Most of us are likely to develop some specific access requirements throughout our lives due to longer life expectancy or health conditions. So sooner or later, we will all appreciate accessibility to be put in place. Accessibility concerns the whole tourism value chain. Adapting, for example, a hotel and having no accessible local transportation to an important museum disrupts a tourism experience and causes consumer frustration. Accessible tourism for all is also a major business opportunity. Inclusive and accessible destinations and businesses are untapping an immense market potential and becoming more competitive. These accessibility champions are also showcasing their leadership within our industry in its rather complex recovery after the pandemic. An accessible destination embraces more visitors and tourists and thus increases its revenue performance. The current rebound of tourism should not discriminate between clients with or without access needs. Every customer counts. Accessibility benefits both the local population and visitors. It improves the overall quality of life and positions tourism businesses on new markets as they target new segments and expand their outreach. Nevertheless, many destinations and companies are still unaware of basic measures to proceed with the necessary improvements. They require common concepts and guidance. The tourism service providers need to speak the same language when assessing and upgrading their accessibility features or when offering new accessible products and experiences. Collaboration and governance platforms are still relatively weak. Accessibility is about joint efforts of a broad spectrum of key players who altogether bring in pieces of a seamless travel experience. This exercise involves both the public and the private sectors, destinations, trade associations, and of course, the end users representatives, the disabled people's organizations. UNWTO has always been convinced that an international comprehensive standard would be needed to bridge the pending obstacles and make the accessible tourism value chain more solid. We felt that it was urgent to suggest a series of recommendations for national tourism administrations, destination management organizations, and service providers to facilitate policymaking and strategic actions in the sphere of accessibility. Therefore, UNWTO joined hands in 2016 with the ONCE Foundation and the Spanish standardization agency UNE to develop such an instrument at the global level and submitted a proposal in this sense to the International Standardization Organization, ISO. Our organization assumed the role of convener of the expert working group in charge of elaborating the new international standard within the ISO Technical Committee 228, which deals with tourism and related services. As convener, our main role was to ensure a multi-sectoral consensus. This consensus was required between more than 85 experts coming from 35 countries and representing the interests of the whole tourism industry, the accessibility end users and consumers advocates. We are pleased that upon UNWTO's proposal and in collaboration with Portugal, a very active member of the working group, we have achieved to include recommendations also for public administrations. This represents a novelty in ISO standards as opposed to ISO traditional focus on service providers. The publication of the standard in July this year, after 4 years of arduous work, also fully coincided with the tourism recovery process. In the same period, UNWTO and its partners launched 2 sets of inclusive recovery guides to reopen tourism without imposing unnecessary obstacles for visitors with disabilities. We further suggested specific policy and strategic measures to advance accessible tourism under these new circumstances. So putting in place these guidelines and the new ISO standard is a perfect match when it comes to designing an inclusive tourism recovery by governments, destinations, and businesses. These instruments can serve to embrace the wealth of human diversity, making us all feel equal and welcomed when enjoying travel and tourism. We should never forget that facilitating a good access is everybody's business, and that no one should be left behind. Now, please let me introduce to you Ivor Ambrose, Managing Director of the European Network for Accessible Tourism, ENAT, with whom UNWTO has been collaborating for more than a decade. Ivor will moderate the webinar today's webinar, and introduce the speakers. So please, Ivor, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marina. So I'm here today, as you say, as moderator, timekeeper, and I will be introducing the speakers. Thank you very much, Marina, and welcome to our speakers and to all of you participating from around the world in this webinar today. I'd like to just say a few words about tourism and tourism in the present state we're in. Tourism doesn't just happen by itself. It depends on many organizations and individuals, links in the value chain working together. The COVID-19 pandemic was and is a cross-cutting global challenge that has had a negative impact on every kind of travel, every tourism experience, every destination, every business, and every would-be traveler. Now, we didn't need COVID to teach us the lesson that all parts of the tourism sector must cooperate to deliver the kind of tourism we want and which the whole world needs. But this has been a kind of wake-up call, if we needed one. There's also the climate crisis, the inequality and the injustices that exist in many areas of life in all our communities that threaten us all, and these challenges must be met by concerted responses from governments and national tourist authorities, the business community and citizens working together towards common goals. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for 2030 give us a framework for such coordination, breaking down the targets into manageable objectives and uniting different actors around common themes, including gender equality, decent work, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, and many more. So tourism, and in particular accessible tourism for all, must play a part in realizing all of these goals and indeed all the other sustainable development goals. Now, we set up ENAT more than 12 years ago as a network association to develop and share good practices in tourism for everyone and to promote accessible tourism in Europe and around the world. ENAT's role is to foster cooperation, to work together with tourism authorities, destinations, and operators to develop policies and practices that can inspire and lead the tourism industry towards respecting the diversity of visitors, meeting the access requirements of all generations and people of all abilities and disabilities within the framework of sustainable and equitable development. Now, from these rather lofty ambitions, let us now take a closer look at some of the tools and the methods that the tourism industry is developing and using, doing their part to realize accessible tourism for all. We'll start with the new ISO standard, which is a key enabling tool and a framework for action bringing us for the first time a common language and clear objectives for accessibility in the tourism sector that we hope will be used around the world. I'd like to thank the UN World Tourism Organization and Fundación ONCE and UNE for taking this initiative and leading this important work, and for the opportunity as INAT to contribute to the working group. So after we've heard from the next two speakers, we will share with you some examples that I think will show the way towards a better quality of tourism as we learn to cope with the crisis and find new ways to coordinate and cooperate for a better world where tourism is a force for good. So I now give the floor to my colleague and friend, Dr. Jesus Hernandez from the ONCE Foundation. He's the Director of Universal Accessibility and Innovation and a Vice President of INAT. So over to you, Jesus.
Ahora ponía que el anfitrión no me dejaba activar mi micrófono, o sea que, Ivor, tú me dabas, you give me the floor, but I don't have the microphone open, so I couldn't speak. Bueno, voy a hablar en español para reivindicar el español como una de las lenguas más habladas a lo largo del mundo, probablemente la segunda, si no contamos al chino, que lo hablan los chinos, pero en inglés y en español que sean las dos lenguas más habladas del mundo. Te comentaba Marina que en el año 2016 unimos nuestras fuerzas las tres entidades que hemos desarrollado, trabajado conjuntamente para avanzar con esta norma ISO, con un estándar sobre accesibilidad al turismo, pero nuestra relación empezó antes, ¿no? ¿Y por qué decidimos hacer una norma? Juntamos nuestras fuerzas, como decía antes, para hacer una norma sobre turismo accesible, pues simplemente porque no existía. Porque habíamos desarrollado muchas normas en diferentes ámbitos, había normativa, había estándares en el ámbito del patrimonio, en el ámbito del transporte, en el ámbito de la edificación, en el ámbito del urbanismo, pero no teníamos un documento que ayudara a uno de los sectores económicos más importantes del mundo y que afectaba directamente a la población en general y muy especialmente a turistas con algún problema en su movilidad, en su capacidad cognitiva, en su capacidad sensorial, a poder disfrutar de los destinos turísticos en las mismas condiciones de igualdad y con los mismos derechos que el resto de los turistas, y por eso decidimos aunar nuestras fuerzas para avanzar en esta línea. ¿Quiénes lo hicimos? Lo ha comentado antes Ivor, pues la OMT, con la que llevamos una relación muy estrecha, y firmamos nuestro primer convenio de colaboración en el año 2012, y han sido muchos los frutos que hemos tenido de esta colaboración conjunta, como por ejemplo, pues se consiguió, y eso fue, la verdad es que un gran logro por parte del equipo de Marina en introducir en la Asamblea General unas recomendaciones sobre accesibilidad o las guías, los documentos técnicos que desarrollamos a posteriori también en colaboración con la Fundación ACS. Y con UNE llevamos colaborando desde que no se llamaba UNE, desde que se llamaba ENOR. Llevamos desde principios de este siglo. Empezamos por allá de los años 2000, 2001, 2002 con la UNE 170.001, una norma pionera en nuestro país que estandarizaba las cuestiones de accesibilidad, los criterios de accesibilidad en edificación. Ha sido una norma bastante pionera que ha permitido un esquema de certificación sobre esa norma para poder garantizar que los edificios sean accesibles. Y desde entonces llevamos haciendo una actividad ingente de estandarización, tanto a nivel nacional como a nivel europeo, porque fruto de la colaboración UNE Fundación 11 hemos también liderado algunos estándares europeos desde aquí, desde España, ¿no? Por eso sí, recalcar y reflejar el por qué iniciamos esta andadura, el desarrollo de un estándar, de una norma que regulara, que ayudara, porque en definitiva más que regular lo que hace es ayudar a aquellos responsables, ya sean empresarios, ya sean políticos, ya sean gestores, todos aquellos que tengan algo que ver con el mundo del turismo como destino, responsables de agencias de viajes, de transporte, de diseño de políticas, etcétera, que tengan esta guía de ayuda para introducir los criterios de accesibilidad. Además, una guía en la que hemos tenido que trabajar mucho, tanto Marina en su rol de convenor como yo en el rol de project leader, y sobre todo el equipo que hemos tenido trabajando en el día a día. Y ahí desde la Secretaría Técnica, sí que Natalia ha hecho un trabajo fantástico para llegar al consenso. No era sencillo el tener una norma que fuera de aplicación en cualquier país del mundo, sea cual sea su nivel de accesibilidad. Eso sí que era un gran reto, y además obtener un documento que tiene una altísima calidad didáctica. Es un documento que puede ayudar a cualquiera, hace un recorrido bastante intenso a lo largo de toda la cadena de valor del turismo, para que sea donde sea, esté donde esté, el foco de quien quiera utilizar la norma pueda utilizarla de una forma clara, precisa, concisa y fácil. También tiene algunas cuestiones importantes, como son ejemplos en los anexos, ejemplos concretos. Nos parecía importante, aunque la norma se ha basado en requisitos funcionales, era importante también dar algún parámetro técnico que pudiera ayudar a aquellos que quisieran hacer pues un mostrador, o quisieran hacer una habitación, o quisieran hacer un cuarto de baño accesible, tuvieran esos criterios técnicos a través de estos anexos para poderlo implantar. ¿Qué nos queda sobre la norma? Pues nos queda bastante. Nos queda, para empezar, implantarla. He visto la luz este año, con lo cual nos queda implantarla. Este año, bueno, al final del año pasado, nos queda implantarla, pero sobre todo nos queda que sea muy utilizada por todos aquellos que crean que la necesitan, y desarrollar algunas cosas como pueden ser indicadores clave para poder luego recoger datos. Es importantísimo recopilar datos sobre accesibilidad que puedan ayudar tanto a los gestores como a los turistas a seleccionar sus destinos. Los esquemas de certificación sobre la norma o de autoconformidad, evaluación de la conformidad, también puede ser utilizada la norma para ello, con lo cual, bueno, pues como decía, una norma que ha sido fruto del trabajo conjunto de un gran equipo. Yo no me voy a extender en más y voy a dar paso a Natalia, que bueno, como responsable de la Secretaría Técnica de la norma, ha tenido un trabajo arduo, intenso, y gracias a ella también hemos conseguido que esta norma haya visto la luz. Natalia.
Muchas gracias, Jesús. Se me oye, ¿verdad? Sí. Bueno, pues yo había preparado una pequeña presentación para resumir pues todo este trabajo que hemos hecho, ¿no? Es difícil resumir 4 años de trabajo en apenas 6 diapositivas, diría, pero realmente yo creo bueno, que merece la pena darlo a conocer, todo este trabajo que hemos hecho conjunto con OMT, con Fundación 11, pero también con los cientos de expertos que han contribuido en este trabajo, ¿no? Voy a intentar, a ver, un segundo, pasar las diapositivas. Ahora, pues quería hacer este recorrido por la norma de una manera pues muy, digamos, visual, ¿no? Un poco retomando el porqué de Marina, retomando el porqué de Jesús, pero continuando también con en qué consiste la norma, con quién la hemos hecho y para quién la hemos hecho, dónde la hemos realizado, en qué foro, cómo aplicarla y por qué el momento es aquí y ahora. Hablando de los porqués, ¿no? Ya hemos contado que la importancia de disponer de esa herramienta única, ¿no? Que fuera para todo el sector turístico. Comentaba Jesús que tenemos una cuarentena de normas en materia de accesibilidad en UNE, pero también tenemos una cuarentena de normas en materia de turismo, ¿no? Y nos faltaba hacer justamente ese enlace, ¿no?, entre accesibilidad y turismo, que parece que se miraban de reojo y no acababan de encontrarse. Y esta ha sido una oportunidad única de juntar ambos elementos en un único documento, que abarcara, como decíamos, también toda la cadena de valor. No queríamos una norma solo para hoteles o una norma solo de turismo accesible para el transporte, queríamos incluir a todos los prestadores de turismo, a la administración, es decir, a toda la cadena de valor afectada por el turismo accesible, ¿no? Y armonizar esos criterios a nivel internacional. En muchos países pues hay legislación, en otros hay incluso algunas normas que pueden ser parciales para algunos sectores, pero digamos que era un puzzle difícil de resolver, ¿no?, con muchos vacíos y distintos niveles de exigencia, ¿no? Entonces, esta norma lo que trataba era de dar un panorama global, equilibrado, es decir, no poner el acento en un tipo de actividad o de servicio, sino dar una visión equilibrada en todos los subsectores, homogénea y, como decían antes también, que tratara de hablar ese mismo idioma para todos los países, ¿no? Porque lo que tratamos con la norma tampoco es crear nichos. No estamos haciendo una norma para ese 15% de la población que comentaba Marina, que tiene algún tipo de discapacidad o alguna necesidad especial, sino que estamos haciendo una norma para el 100% de la población, incluido el 15% que tiene algún tipo de necesidad de acceso en materia de accesibilidad. Entonces, bueno, pues esta norma también supone una oportunidad para crear una oferta pues, más inclusiva, más justa, porque, como comentaba también Marina, tenemos esa obligación moral, ¿no?, de que los servicios turísticos sean prestados para todos, ¿no?, y para todas. Y que esta oferta esté más adaptada, ¿no?, no solo a los clientes presentes, sino también a los futuros, ¿no? La población de más de 65 años va a crecer hasta el 15, el 16% de aquí a 2050, con lo cual es un mercado emergente, ¿no? Y así hay que verlo también. ¿Cómo es la norma, ¿no? Es una norma, como todas las normas, son normas de aplicación voluntaria, ¿no? Entonces es una herramienta más que tenemos a nuestra disposición para, digamos, prestar servicios más inclusivos, ¿no? Cubre toda la cadena de valor, es aplicable en cualquier país, para cualquier subsector turístico, eso es lo que hemos intentado, y para cualquier tipo de organización, ya sea una pyme, un gestor de un destino, una compañía de transporte, etcétera. Y lo que hace es combinar ese enfoque, como decíamos antes, didáctico, de explicar el porqué de algunos requisitos, por qué se pide esto de esta manera, pero también centrándonos en el objetivo final, es decir, tiene un enfoque más funcional, ¿no? Intentamos evitar marcar parámetros numéricos, sino explicar el objetivo de ese requisito, de esa recomendación, ¿no? Por qué se necesita que las cosas se hagan de esta manera, ¿no? Por lo tanto, ha supuesto un trabajo pues, duro a nivel de encontrar ese equilibrio, ¿no?, entre requisitos que sean genéricos, pero que sean también aplicables, que sean prácticos y que sean factibles, porque podemos poner el listón aquí, pero si el sector turístico no está dispuesto a poner en marcha esas medidas, no nos sirve de nada, ¿no?, hacer una norma idealista que al final sea difícilmente aplicable, ¿no? Y había que llegar a ese difícil compromiso, ¿no?, que fuera factible también para las administraciones turísticas, para los proveedores de servicios turísticos, y que tuviera esas pautas claras, ¿no? ¿Quiénes lo hemos elaborado? Pues como comentaban antes, ha sido un poco un tripartito entre la Organización Mundial del Turismo, Fundación 11 y la Asociación Española de Normalización, cada uno en su rol, y hemos contado con la gran suerte de tener a muchos de los ponentes de hoy, espero que algunos de los oyentes también, como expertos internacionales colaborando en la redacción de los requisitos y de estas normas. Hemos tenido asociaciones de agencias de viajes, hemos tenido pymes, consumidores, universidades, plataformas de de accesibilidad, administraciones públicas de todos los rincones del mundo, desde Trinidad y Tobago hasta Panamá, pasando por Malasia o incluso Canadá, o un sinfín de países han colaborado. ¿Y para quién? ¿Para quién hacemos esta norma? Pues para todas las personas en general, pero centrándonos también en las personas con discapacidad, pero también en las personas mayores, personas con discapacidad temporal, familias con niños. Es decir, como decía al principio Marina, estas medidas van a beneficiar a todos por igual. Y se aplica en toda la cadena de valor, desde el transporte hasta el sector público, pasando por actividades de ocio, espacios urbanos, etcétera, ¿no? Alojamiento, restauración. ¿Y cómo lo hemos hecho? Bueno, pues lo hemos hecho primero elaborando un primer borrador que elaboró Fundación 11, pasando por toda la experiencia del cliente, que luego tuvimos que retocar, pero vamos, que ha sido un trabajo de consenso, un trabajo transparente, donde hemos partido de documentos también existentes en otros países para contar con las necesidades reales del sector y, como digo, de una manera abierta y en una colaboración público-privada. ¿Y cómo lo podemos aplicar? Que sería un poco una segunda parte, que ahora ya está el documento publicado en el mes de julio, lo tenemos en la calle, pero muy bien, ¿y ahora qué hacemos con él, no? Bueno, pues hay distintas maneras de aplicar ese documento. Lo primero es interiorizarlo, leérselo, ver un poco las partes que aplican a cada uno. Hay una parte genérica que aplica a todos los prestadores de servicio y luego hay partes, capítulos concretos para cada uno de esos prestadores de los servicios turísticos. Y podemos utilizar esta norma como una herramienta para la mejora interna, ¿no? Para realizar un primer autodiagnóstico y ver si cumplimos con esos requisitos indicados en la norma con un sol o cumplimos esas recomendaciones indicados en la norma con un sub. Y podemos hacer ese, vamos a decir, checklist de en qué punto estamos de cumplimiento con respecto de las buenas prácticas indicadas en la norma. Esto podría ser una primera aplicación, una autodeclaración de si cumplimos o no cumplimos con la norma. Hemos chequeado nuestro negocio turístico, vamos a decir así, o nuestro destino, o nuestro hotel, o nuestra agencia de viajes, o nuestro restaurante, y podemos chequear en base a la norma si cumplimos o no cumplimos y declararlo. Otra opción podría ser una evaluación por segunda parte. Pongamos, por ejemplo, una agencia, un turoperador que negocia con un hotel, pero que esa agencia, pues para poder comercializar sus servicios, le pide al hotel que cumpla una serie de requisitos, y esos requisitos bien pueden ser los requisitos de accesibilidad marcados en esta norma. Y entonces es una relación entre dos y el turoperador puede chequear que el hotel en cuestión, en base a la norma, cumple o no cumple los requisitos que le aplican. Esto sería una evaluación por segunda parte, es decir, que en una relación contractual una parte verifica que la otra cumple los requisitos de la norma. Y quizás el método que es más, digamos, extendido, porque aporta una mayor confianza, una mayor seguridad al usuario, es la auditoría por tercera parte independiente, es decir, un tercero ajeno a esa relación entre, por ejemplo, el turoperador y el hotel, certifica, chequea primero mediante auditoría que esa empresa o ese hotel...
Hey, Natalia, can you come to a close, please, because we are running over time.
Yes. Que en ese ejemplo que cumple, ¿no? Entonces aporta el valor de un tercero certificando que ese documento, esos requisitos se cumplen. ¿Dónde lo hemos elaborado este documento? Pues en el Comité ISO TC 228 de Turismo. Como hemos dicho, más de 100 expertos de 35 países y 5 organizaciones en liaison, entre ellos ENAT, han colaborado muy de cerca en la elaboración y ha sido validado por más de 100 países. ¿En UNE qué hemos hecho? Bueno, pues hemos publicado de forma idéntica en español y lo hemos hecho traduciendo el documento en la misma fecha de la publicación de la ISO. Y, como digo, es un documento que se puede aplicar sin limitación geográfica. No me deja pasar de hoja ahora. No sé qué
pero es Ivor que te está regañando y ya no te deja,
y ya no me deja seguir.
Claro,
Vale.
con lo cual te pide que vayas terminando.
Ahora,
Que va a
vale.
regañar otra vez.
Vale, es la última. Es la última. ¿Y por qué ahora, no? Decíamos que, bueno, en plena pandemia quizás hay muchas empresas o destinos que tengan, en principio, preocupaciones mayores o que pudiéramos pensar que las tienen, pero es el momento adecuado. Estamos ahí en el momento, en la cresta de la ola, en el inicio de la recuperación y realmente es el momento adecuado para no dejar a nadie atrás y utilizar esta norma. Como decía, también es una década para la acción. Mencionaba Ivor los ODS, ¿no? El ODS 10, el ODS de comunidades sostenibles, reducción de las desigualdades. Bueno, pues todos y cada uno de nosotros podemos contribuir a los ODS. Y esta es una manera de hacerlo no solo desde los destinos, desde las instituciones, sino desde las propias organizaciones turísticas. Y por ello, pues animo a todos a difundir su contenido y a todas las organizaciones turísticas a aplicar la norma para que también el usuario demande su cumplimiento. Y ya no me alargo más. Perdona, Igor.
Thank you very much, Natalia. You've given a good and clear, comprehensive view of the standard. And of course, we all hope after all this hard work that it will be embraced by the tourism actors and stakeholders, and that they will actually use it as we go forward. And this will, of course, require the assistance and the expertise of many people who are working in accessibility. In our presentations that are coming up now, we're going to hear from those who are involved actively in the built environment, in hospitality services, and also in organizing tours as tour operators, and then in policy making. So the next speaker, over to you, my colleague and also partner in the work that was done in the standard, Marnie Peters. Please go ahead with your presentation, Marnie, from Ottawa in Canada. Marnie, sound on, please. Have we lost Marnie? I'm not seeing Marnie in the list of participants anymore.
Can you hear me now?
There we
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just I couldn't get unmuted there. So thank you to the UNWTO for inviting me to speak today, and to Fondation Once and UNE and to ENAT for collaborating and bringing this all together. So as Ivor mentioned, I work in the field of the built environment. My name is Marnie Peters. My firm is Accessibility Simplified, and I've been working in the field of accessibility and universal design of the built environment for over 20 years. And I specialize in large commercial and institutional type projects. So hotels, transportation facilities like airports and terminals. I'm right now working on the Parliament buildings in Canada. So really big, large things, tourist things where tourists want to go to. And let's see if I can get my slides to work. There we go. So the access chain, universal accessibility is a continuum. It can be thought of as the links of the access chain. And to achieve universal accessibility, we must consider not only the full range of users, but also the accessibility throughout the range of the experience. So universal accessibility cannot exist as a singular examples of good design. It must be a continuum. If there's only islands of accessibility, then people with disabilities cannot be full and participating members of society, and that includes being tourists and enjoying and tourism and travel. So in order for people to be included in this full societal participation,
Sorry, I lost the sound. Are you there, Marnie?
I am. Where did you lose my sound? Oh.
Well, yeah, please carry on. Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. We seem to be having some trouble with the line through to Canada. And perhaps we could come back to Marnie's presentation in a moment. So I'd like to...
I came back.
Oh, you came back, you're there, Marnie. Okay.
I did. My internet waited until it was my presentation to, you know, conk out.
Okay, okay. Go ahead then, please take us then to the next slide and
I
from
will.
the chain to the next slide. Thank you. Thank you very much.
It doesn't seem to want to go to the next slide. Oh, there we go. Now we went 2 slides too far. So the tourism value chain, and what does that mean? So we have to consider all of the steps. So the booking, the ticketing, do you have to go to a physical location to get your ticket? What about transportation? The built environment includes, you know, all of the terminals I mentioned for airports, trains and ferries, all the different stations. For food, can I get into all the best restaurants that I want to go to? And accommodation, we think about the large hotels, like my colleague from Marriott's going to speak about next, but also, you know, bed and breakfast and heritage hotels. And what about excursions? Are they accessible to people with a full range of disabilities? So the value chain has a really big impact, and the built environment plays a big impact in the tourism value chain. So if we think about the built environment and the impacts on public infrastructure and public rights of way, we have to consider that it benefits not only tourists, but also locals. So there's 3 photos on the screen, and one is of me, and I'm in, I forget where I am. But anyways, it's a public square, it's at night, it's well lit, the restaurant is accessible, so I have full access to the public realm. The next photo below is, it's an intersection, but it shows a person pushing somebody in a wheelchair and a senior, but there's also cycling facilities. And so as cycling facilities become introduced throughout the world, how do we ensure that pedestrian safety is still a priority? And then there's the photo on the right is tactile directional wayfinding from Japan, which is useful to not only people with vision loss, but also people with varying cognitive abilities, people who are neurodiverse. I found when I was in Japan, if I ever got lost, all I had to do was follow me because it all takes you somewhere important.
Yeah, we're having some trouble with Marnie's connection here, and I think we may need to cut off.
Great.
How are you, Marnie?
Oh, I'm really sorry. Where did I lose you?
Yeah,
I was just talking about how impact on
Okay.
public.
Now we've got some real gremlins in the system. No, there may be some other activity going on around you that's eating up the internet bandwidth. Listen, I'm sorry to stop you there, but let's transfer now over to our next speaker, if we may. And I would ask the technical team working on the slides to bring in, there are no slides for the next presentation, so I'd like to bring in Apoyar Gandhi, who is the Senior Vice President, Multicultural Affairs for Social Impact and Business Councils at Marriott International. And Apoyar, it's a great pleasure to have you with us. And we really look forward to hearing from you and the work you're doing at Marriott. So please take over and we will come back to Marnie later on. Thank you.
Fantastic. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay, hola. Gracias por esta excelente oportunidad de hablar contigo hoy. Es un honor estar aquí. Mi nombre es Apurva Gandhi, Vice Presidente Senior de Marriott International. Hoy me gustaría hablarte de la importancia de dar la bienvenida a todos, sin importar quién eres, de dónde eres, cuáles son tus habilidades o a quién amas. Ahora debo cambiar a inglés para continuar. Gracias. Pardon my Spanish. I wanted to try my best there from my learnings of Spanish as a kid. I hope I did okay. Maybe next year I'll be able to do the whole thing in Spanish. But I do want to thank all of you for this great opportunity. And I wanted to speak about a few key messages here. We've already heard so many great things from the other panelists, but it's so important to us at Marriott International, and I think all of us on this call, that we welcome all. We welcome all, no matter who you are, where you come from, what your abilities are, or who you love. It's important that everyone feels comfortable when they come into a Marriott hotel. And that means we want to focus on inclusion, and that's making sure that we have accessibilities for our guests, but also for our employees around the globe. We find it's essential to really build that environment of belonging, but also, you know, it's really critical, I think, for businesses like ours and many others to realize that inclusion truly drives innovation and drives business success. You know, when you think about it, you could make a very, very good case that individuals with disabilities you could say are some of the most innovative people on the globe. Why is that? Because many are operating and living in a world that is not always set up for them, right? And what does that build? It builds a mindset of constant innovation, constant scanning the environment, constant looking for solutions quickly when when barriers may appear. That is a great skill set. That is an important skill set. That is a skill set that I think any organization would value and cherish and have in their company or association. And it can lead to business success. And I think this is something that's often overlooked. I do believe that companies and organizations do need to provide accessible environments based on equity and what people need to be successful. And why wouldn't you want to do that? That's essential to building an environment of top-notch performance, top-notch results, no matter what you're doing. But I think also corporations, as they do these things, need to listen to the community of travelers or individuals with disabilities. There's a famous saying in the community, at least I hear it a lot in the United States, that says, nothing about us without us. Nothing about us without us. And I think companies or organizations that don't follow that are at risk of doing it incorrectly. It's critical, just like you would research any other group of potential employees, potential guests, potential partners in business, that you understand, and you understand directly from that organization or from that community. And I think as corporations think about how to improve and create accessible tourism for all, or in any industry, accessible products and services, I think there's almost maybe 3 steps to it. One is to understand, as I mentioned before, the innovative power and frankly, the spending power of this demographic. It's critical. It is important to do these accessibility activities for the right reasons. And that's 100% true. But many times, if you look at this also as to what is the business value not only to have people with disabilities in your organization, but also as customers. Understanding that spending power is very, very critical and can help drive a lot of initiatives. As I always say, doing the right thing and marrying that up with a great business case is a beautiful thing. I love it when doing the right thing also helps you achieve business success. But it takes some understanding. It takes some listening to the community. Once you understand that the spending power and innovative power, then the next step is to really create accessible products and services. And now I'll speak for the hotel or hospitality at my company. You know, we work very closely with the community to understand every step along the way, from trip search to hotel selection online, or another way, or on the phone, or other ways to make reservations. And then everything from check-in to check-out and everything in between. How is the check-in process feel? Is it done with cultural competence? How's the room? Do we train our teams to understand what does a traveler who uses a wheelchair do when they typically come into a room? Is the door too heavy? What we've learned is sometimes the carpets are too thick. There may not be enough room to maneuver. Many travelers with disabilities will come into a room and the first thing they do is they set it up the way they like it. But we need to make sure our dear housekeepers and service staff, when they clean the room, don't put everything back, right? That was a big learning for us. So we want to make sure that we create accessible products and services that matter. We want to understand the differences that make a difference. And then it's critical as we communicate this and market it and talk about it and check people in, that we do it in a culturally competent manner that opens up new employment streams, new revenue streams, and a stream of welcoming and belonging that reinforces our culture of inclusion. But you got to listen to the community. And again, it's nothing about us without us. And we were able to do that with a very important project I'm quite proud of called the Room for All, where we built a test room in our kind of top secret lair in the basement of our headquarters, where we put our test rooms. But it included many concepts in there that our owners and hoteliers could look at as to how to make a beautiful and elegant room that anyone will be proud to stay in and is functional for everybody. And it had a lot of use of technology, a lot of input in terms of certain sort of tools and materials that travelers with disabilities wanted and use. And we showcase that in the hope and in the hopes that our hotels will adopt some of these. But we didn't just do it on our own in a silo. We had multiple meetings with travelers with disabilities where we welcomed them to our headquarters, and we sat and we listened and we took a lot of notes. And what we were able to do was create something that the community felt good about. Our group was, we had diversity within diversity. We had travelers who were blind, travelers who were deaf, travelers with who use a wheelchair, travelers with autism, and much more. And if you notice, you know, even the way I'm speaking, using people first language is very, very important to us. But these were all important learnings that we took and then worked on very hard. In fact, some of these travelers invited us to their homes so that they could show us what they called the hacks. So we could see what folks had done in their homes on an everyday basis, because we wanted Marriott to be the place where people said, wow, they already thought of that. That's fantastic. So we could ensure that everyone had a great stay. So with that, I'm at my 10-minute moment, but I want to thank all of you for, and thank the organization for inviting me. And I hope to see you soon at a Marriott hotel. And please come and stay with us and let us take great care of you. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Purva. And that has been a very revealing and honest explanation of how you've taken accessibility head on and worked with the visitors, with the users who have access requirements to find out what they need and to work on that in a 360-degree way, looking at all kinds of disabilities in all kinds of situations. As long as you have them under your roof and on your premises, you want to give them the best experience you can. And that's very heartening and a very powerful message from a leading hotel chain in the world. When you're taking it seriously, I think everyone will realize they should be taking it seriously. So thank you for your example and your fine explanation of how you're working on this. So we'll move on and we'll come back to Marnie again later. So we'll move on now to Claire Crowley from Push Adventures Australia. And she's a tour operator and also has been working in this field for a number of years. Please introduce yourself, Claire, and go ahead. You've got also 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that introduction. So as Ivor said, I've been working in the accessibility field for almost 20 years now, due to lived experience with my husband who uses a wheelchair. So I've been specialising in supporting small to medium sized, oh sorry, is my slide? Oh, there, yeah. Sorry, just bear with me. There we go. So I've been specialising in supporting small to medium-sized mainstream tourism operators to be more inclusive. And so as tourism is a customer service-based industry, and as the research says that visitors are ageing and have a diversity of needs and want immersive connectedness and spontaneity in their experiences. So by taking these elements into consideration, we help operators get on the right path to better serve the needs of the accessible travel community. But more than that, creating an accessible experience helps build confidence, skills, and improved well-being for the community. And the social impact of this on families just like mine is priceless. Whilst we encourage all new businesses to aim for inclusion and universal access from the start, there is so much that can be done in making improvements to existing businesses. And this is not about offering a completely new or separate experience, but more about thinking creatively to find more ways for people to experience what operators already have to offer. And we know that the effect that COVID-19 has on the industry has forced this issue in so many ways for businesses to adopt the technology and to bring experiences online, as just one example. Accessible tourism is also not about meeting just about meeting regulations. It's about creating that meaningful experience for people, and not just the person with the specific needs, but the whole travel party. So take my family, for example. If it isn't accessible for my husband, it isn't accessible for my whole family and friends we are traveling with. So in Australia, the travel industry is made up of largely of small to medium-sized businesses, and meaning that managers and owners still work in their businesses, which also means that they know their business so well from an operational perspective. However, what they don't know is how people with different needs and abilities can access and participate in their environment. And this is what we help operators do. We help them understand their access from a different perspective so that they can do two things. One, clearly communicate it to any potential guests. And two, they can start to identify where the barriers are and they can start to reduce them and overcome them. So to me, accessible tourism is a combination of welcoming customer service and an accessible environment. And because we are all unique in our ability and we know our own ability best, what we require most is a welcoming customer experience. We want evidence that you've started to consider our needs and have listened to our inquiries and concerns, and that you are eager to find a way to share your experience with us. The built and natural environment will also always have challenges, but your attitudes and customer service should not. And this is actually one of the biggest things that we've learned from working with operators, is that they need to move away from just thinking about the built environment, that the customer service has equal weighting in the experience, and that there's so many things they can do at this point to make that experience more inclusive. So that's one of the key things that we've found, is changing that conversation so that people stop thinking about the costs involved with being more inclusive and realize they have so much in their control at this point. So many people with disabilities with high support needs only participate in day trips because they aren't able to piece together enough pieces of information or services to ensure they're going to have a successful experience. And this is a sentiment that's been shared over a few times today. So, and while many other people benefit from accessible experiences, like our aged community, that we keep returning to those tried and tested locations because we know that our needs will be met. There's too much stress and anxiety in planning trips to new locations because, after all, you only have your 4 weeks of holiday every year and a certain amount of money. So if your holiday doesn't work out, then you've missed your opportunity for the year. But however, the collaboration between service providers in a destination can help you join all the necessary dots for people to come and have a full and immersive experience. So how can you get started if you're a small to medium-sized business in this industry? By educating yourself and your team to understand how people participate in your experience. And then you can find more ways to make your experience more meaningful and immersive. But by really understanding every corner of your experience from the planning phase through to participation, and ensuring your staff do, means that when people contact you with their specific inquiries, you have a much better grasp on how any potential barriers or concerns that may need to be addressed. It also challenges you to think more creatively and find more ways for people to participate in the experience you have to offer. So whether it's by providing audio descriptions or taking an alternate route or by providing a tactile experience, always aim to make it more meaningful. There is so much more that can be done. Sorry, I seem to have, thank you. Thanks for your time. Mine's gone a little bit shorter than my 10 minutes, but I share so many of the sentiments that's been talked about today, which I think just goes to show that we are all like marching to the same tune, and that we really do know which way to build this an accessible future. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Claire. I think you've given a very clear message here. It's about experience, and it's about looking after every single person and the group that they're with. So I think that's a very, very important message. And we heard from Marriott, one of the big chains in the world, and you're talking about the small and medium-sized enterprises, the very smallest businesses that can also do something, and they don't realize that they have some access. And you explain it to them, and first of all, you get them to put it out there, to explain their access to people. And I think that's one of the most important things, to communicate that a business can be accessible for some people, some of the time in some respects, and they start from that point and then start to improve. So I think you've shown us that this is a journey. It's not something that you do from one day to the next. It's something that you have to plan and you have to work towards over a period of time. It will require resources, of course, but I mean, just tell us, if you could, just one example of how you've helped out with a company in Australia. What's a typical kind of problem set that you come across?
Sure. Often we find in places like caravan parks that they're actually not aware of their accessibility. And so we've got a favourite caravan park here in South Australia that we have been going to, over the last few years. And they never realised that their spa was accessible because they have beach entrance into the spa and a ramp, but they actually didn't even realise that that's what they had. And so when we brought it to their attention that we could, as a family get in the spa, they were blown away. So Yeah, so it's just that awareness piece. Like once they've had their senses alerted to, you know, how people are experiencing their environment, then they understand, you know, much better. And then, yeah, can come up with these creative solutions to, you know, to ensure that everyone's enjoying them. So, but as we all know, if we don't know about it, we can't come and experience it. So just telling people, and actually in adopting that technology that we all have in our iPhones to show people what is in your environment is one of the easiest ways that operators can get started on their journey to be more inclusive. And the thing is, there actually isn't an end goal in being more inclusive, because it is, as you mentioned, it's a journey. It's like training. It's, you know, you've just got to keep working at it. And when you know better, you can keep doing better. So it should just be part of your business continuity plan.
Well, that's it. And I think also you show people in that way that it's nothing to be scared about. It's nothing to be fearful of. That it's quite ordinary once you get down to the brass tacks. When you get down to business, what's it really about? Then there are many problems that just dissolve away. Okay, thanks a lot. Nice to have you here, Claire. And
thank you.
Okay, it may be almost past your bedtime, I know, but thanks very much for being with us.
Definitely, thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on now. So from the small scale also to the national scale, to talk to or to listen to Teresa Ferreira, who is the director of the Resources Development Department and one of our good colleagues and supporters of INAT as well, Turismo de Portugal. Teresa, please speak to us about your experiences from Portugal. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting Turismo de Portugal and Portugal to be part of this session, inspiring and really important to continue improving and talking and put accessibility in tourism in the agenda of all of us. So we belong to Turismo de Portugal, which is the national authority for tourism in Portugal. And we were asked to talk about accessibility in policy making. So I will try to talk about some of our experience of the works that we are moving on. And of course, I have to start with our national strategy, just to point out the importance to bring accessibility to the main tools of public policy in the countries and regarding tourism. So in our national strategy, which will be in place till 2027, and also in our sustainable tourism plan that we have launched this year, which is a more pragmatic plan regarding sustainability. We include this issue of accessibility, because all these tools and these public policy tools are based on the 3 pillars of sustainability. So economical, environmental, and social. And for us, it's logical that accessibility has to be one of the approaches, one of the issues that is strategic to develop tourism in Portugal. So we really have an inclusive approach in these documents that are really focused on people, because that's the main important issue when we talk about tourism. People, the 3 kinds of people that work in tourism, so professionals, we have to work with them and qualify them and achieve that they are really respected. We have people in communities for whom tourism has to be a tool for their territories and their development, and of course the tourists that we want to satisfy and to bring very interesting experiences. So put accessibility in our main tools of public policies. And this is so important for us because it's the main point of our purpose as a touristic destination. So our value proposition is to welcome everyone and respect differences. So wherever people are, wherever they come, which independent of their cultural basis, religious basis, or special needs, we have, and we want to respect differences. So everything has to be coherent, and accessibility has to be in our main strategies. So we have a program that have been launching 2016, which we call the All for All Portuguese Tourism Program, and it's our umbrella to bring all the initiatives, the activities that we do regarding accessibility. And we work on these three topics, these three pillars. So develop the product. So we have to work on eliminate physical and communication barriers, support training. It's such an important issue, and of course promote destinations. And regarding develop, I just want to mention some topics that we are working on. First of all, we are reviewing our legislation regarding requirements for new accommodation classification, and we are putting accessibility requirements to be mandatory in some categories of accommodation and optional in other ones. So trying to be a little behind the legislation that is a national legislation for all buildings and public services. So we will try in our legislation, tourist legislation, put the requirements of accessibility that will help us to improve our offer regarding accessibility. Also about financing. So we as a national authority, we can design some financing programs. We already had 4 years ago a financing program specifically for accessibility for projects, tourist projects, investing on accessibility. Now we are trying to do a different approach. So we are bringing accessibility investment as a qualifier in financing, which means that if promoters want to access to our financing programs, either projects, physical projects or events, because we also finance some big events, these promoters have to have investment in accessibility and sustainability. And so we also are trying to, with financing, putting these issues on the mindset of the promoters and on their investments. So I think it's also a very important opportunity for national authorities. Also, this issue about consistent programs, because as we already said this afternoon, so this is a long journey, and we have to have consistent programs that long and in order to make a difference. And I give you this example of our Accessible Beaches program, which we launched with the other partners. It's really a joint venture program with our national partners. And we have it since 2005. Every year we see the numbers of accessible beaches growing, and we still have some things to do better. So I think it's very important to make even some policies or politics change along the way. It's very important to have consistent programs. So we are trying to be that our new accessible festivals program that we didn't launch yet because of the pandemic situation, but I think we will do that next year. That could be also this consistent program that I'm talking about. And also this opportunity for ISO. I think all the countries have to do a push on these ISO to make it really important for customers and for our partners in tourism sector. So we are going to translate it in Portuguese, and we are going to follow very closely the implementation of this standard in Portugal. So it's really an opportunity that public authorities have to reach. Also training. As we also said here, it's very important to train a lot and in different ways. I just want to remark this experience that we have in our tourism schools, that we have an accessible tourism module in the curricula of our young future professionals in tourism. We have this since 2018, which is very important to bring to the market young professionals that already have this training in accessible tourism, and also, of course, training for professionals that are already in their companies, in their jobs. And we do a lot of executive online training, a lot of webinars, bringing best practices, bringing experts. We are doing new guides, very easy to understand, with a lot of examples, so they can experience how easy, in a way, they can promote accessibility in their businesses. Also some technology in this training with this guest access hub that we have launched this year. And finally, promotion. It's also an important issue to do a little bit at the end of all this work. But I think it's interesting to see that even in initiatives that are not from the national bodies, we have in Portugal a National Tourism Award, which is a private initiative. And it has, since the beginning, an inclusive tourism category, which means that things are coming to the agenda and the mindset of different kinds of people and entities, which is very important. Of course, we have to work on international promotion, producing content to promote accessible offer in Portugal, and that's our challenge for the next years. Just to make a final remark, the need to cooperate and make synergies between tourism and the other sectors of governmental entities and bodies. In Portugal, the government have launched a national strategy for disabled people inclusion, and tourism to Portugal is there. We have some initiatives to do in this national strategy. So we have to be tourism have to be in this work that it's more than tourism regarding disabled people. We also have a national structure to promote accessibility that is working on legislation, and we are also working with them, a national strategy for museums and monuments. There are a lot of regional initiatives. So it means that everyone in their missions are doing something regarding accessibility, which is very important for tourism at the end of the day. So still challenges, training a lot, work holistic, which is very important, and of course work together and changing mentalities, which is really the main the main challenge that we have, because we have all these that we have mentioned, this value chain that we have to work on. And if we put a lot of comprehension, a lot of open mind to solve the problems, it will be much easier to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I think you've given a very good exposition of how you in Turismo de Portugal are addressing the issue of accessibility right across the tourism chain. And what struck me very many times in your presentation was when you referred to the mindset and also to be open and to think in new ways. I think that by pushing in with many directions, with financial instruments, with training and so on, you have really captured the essence of what it means to make a real change in tourism. You're not just changing individual people's mindsets, but you're changing the nature of tourism, I think, in Portugal. And that's why, from INAT's side, I know we see your work as a very positive example, and we encourage everyone to take a look at what you're doing. So as you moving accessibility firmly into the mainstream, so it just becomes tourism and not specifically accessible tourism. It's just tourism for everyone. So thank you so much. I've enjoyed the presentations. I've had a little chatting conversation with Marnie, who has a problem with her internet, and she may come back in the last wrap up, but let me give the floor now to Igor. And I'm sure you've been extracting some very interesting chestnuts, as we say, little jewels that we can learn from all these presentations. It's been a very great experience for me to be with you. Thank you. Igor.
Thank you very much, Ivor. Thank you very much. And also I wish to thank the speakers for all their time and their effort to present. I was just making a mix of questions that came through the audience, and also some of the thoughts that I had during the event. So let me ask maybe our friend from Marriott first. What do you think it takes for the big brands to embrace accessibility and to speak openly about it? Because we normally notice there's a kind of rather shy attitude when it comes to standing up for accessibility issues and speaking about making the installations, the facilities more accessible for all. What do you think it takes for big brands to change that, the whole storytelling?
Thanks so much, Igor. That's a great question. I think that what does it take? It takes awareness, it takes understanding, and it takes a commitment to the culture of that company to ensure that they have a culture of inclusion, right? So at Marriott, we talk about putting people first. We talk about taking care of our associates, making sure places are accessible for all to do great work or to all to come stay is part of that culture. It's not something different. To live up to that culture, you need to live up to having accessible an environment of accessibility and belonging. But I think you're right. I think that there's because of a lack of awareness and understanding. So as I mentioned, understanding the power, positive power of the community to help your organization or as a customer is you have to understand that, because then once you understand that, the question almost flips to, how could you not want to make it accessible, right? Why would you want to not do this? So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Would it be also your final message, or you want to extend it a bit more, just for the final message for the tourism sector?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having this fantastic discussion. And I would just say, you know, realizing that belonging and inclusion is fundamental to success. It's not extra work you have to do. I mean, it's work, but you know, it should not be viewed as extra work. It's fundamental to inclusion. So if you believe in inclusion, you need to believe in this, because this is part of it. And if you don't believe in this, then I would question the commitment to inclusion, you know? Look, we look forward to welcoming all of you at Marriott Hotels one day. And if you have a great stay, tell a friend. If you don't, please tell me. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask, Jesus Hernandez is with us. Jesus, are you back?
I'm not back. I am here from the beginning.
Okay, good. Sorry. So you can answer in Spanish or English, in the language of Cervantes, as they say. You choose.
I choose Spanish.
Please. Okay. So la pregunta en español. ¿Sería aplicable la nueva norma ISO a cualquier destino turístico, independientemente de su nivel de avance, alcance y desarrollo actual?
Ese fue el verdadero reto de esta norma. Lo he comentado en mi intervención al principio, ¿no? El gran reto, además, no lo lanzasteis desde la OMT, porque conocéis perfectamente el nivel de accesibilidad que teníamos en España y nos pusisteis en contexto, que esta norma tenía que ser aplicable no solo en países o en destinos que tenían un nivel de accesibilidad avanzado, no siempre el necesario, porque nos falta mucho para llegar al nivel necesario de accesibilidad, pero en comparación con otros destinos un nivel avanzado, ¿no? Con lo cual fue un reto y como he comentado antes, es una norma muy clara, muy simple, muy sencilla, muy fácil de aplicar, con lo cual, y el objetivo también es que sea una mejora continua, que también aparece en la propia norma, ¿no? Que el responsable del destino no se sienta abrumado por lo que encuentra en la norma, sino que vaya aplicando en función de sus capacidades, de sus posibilidades y vaya planteándose una mejora continua, porque si trata de aplicarla en la globalidad probablemente sea la mejor forma de desestimar la aplicación, ¿no? O sea que la norma es útil para cualquiera y que vaya siguiendo su ritmo.
Entonces, Jesús, si podemos entender tu mensaje también final, dirigido al sector turístico, sería de que una vez se decida uno a aplicar la norma, es suficiente de que empiece pieza por pieza, si no puede hacerlo en su integridad.
Efectivamente, el objetivo es eso, que llegue a un nivel de calidad y de excelencia importante, pero siguiendo su ritmo.
Muchas gracias. Tenemos una pregunta para Natalia, también nuestra compañera. ¿Se prevé el desarrollo de un proceso de certificación a nivel de ISO? Es una pregunta que en la MT también recibimos a menudo porque hay un sistema de certificación bastante complejo, teniendo en cuenta las cuestiones incluidas en la norma. Yo no sé, Natalia, si 1 minuto y medio nos puedes decir cómo funciona la certificación una vez que una norma nueva haya sido adoptada.
Bueno, es una pregunta que, para ser sincera, escapa un poco de mis competencias, que son básicamente la normalización, es decir, poner la norma en el mercado, y a partir de ahí es el propio mercado, el propio consumidor el que marca las reglas, ¿no? Como he comentado en la presentación, hay como esos 3 tipos de evaluación de la conformidad: la autodeclaración, la declaración por segunda parte y la certificación, que es lo que llamamos una auditoría pasada por un tercero independiente que chequea, verifica el cumplimiento de los requisitos que están en la norma. Podríamos decir que no hay una entidad supranacional que pueda o que ahora mismo esté gestionando la certificación de esta norma. Todas las normas, desde el momento en que tienen requisitos, son certificables porque se puede verificar su cumplimiento. Ahora bien, como digo, es en cada país se puede plantear quizás un esquema supranacional que todavía no está en la mesa, pero en cada país hay entidades de certificación y es el prestador de los servicios o el destino turístico, el gestor del destino, quien debe de acudir a esos certificadores para que chequeen, auditen, validen el cumplimiento de los requisitos de esa entidad. Y hasta aquí de momento, por no alargarme más.
Muchas gracias. Y un mensaje final, Natalia, tuyo, ¿por qué las normas de turismo y turismo accesible son importantes? ¿Cuál es de verdad el valor añadido que tú ves en la normalización? Si nos puedes decir en 2 frases el por qué.
Bueno, también he comentado antes que me parece que esta norma es la sinergia de 2 mundos que hasta ahora estaban un poco contrapuestos, ¿no? Entonces, ese valor de la normalización como algo voluntario, es decir, no es legislativo y como decía Jesús, se puede ir acometiendo paso a paso, ¿no? Hay requisitos, pero también hay recomendaciones. El que quiere ir un pasito más allá también tiene esa potestad. Pero mi mensaje principal sería utilizar la norma, leerla, aplicarla. Y sobre eso iremos mejorando.
Gracias. Teresa, if I can ask you something, Turismo de Portugal has made an incredible advancement in the last 10 years when it comes to embracing the whole accessibility value chain aspect and making it happen within the sector. Are you cooperating with other national tourism organizations and administrations in Europe, and maybe if I can say this politically correctly, former maybe Portuguese territories that are inspired by some of the latest Portuguese legislation, or even the Portuguese savoir-faire? Do you have any kind of international cooperation where we inspire other peers to apply accessible tourism by national tourism administrations?
Well, we have just punctual relations, international relations with the other international partners, mainly because of we belong to INAT, and we have a group of national tourism boards, which is very important to exchange practices, and we have bring already quite a lot of colleagues to our webinars to share their experiences and practices. But I think that ISO, this international standard, is a very good point to bring, and perhaps it's also a challenge for ENAT and our national tourism boards to see how can we improve and implement in our countries this international certification, because it's a big one. It has a lot of different dimensions, and we really have to think very well how can we bring them to our stakeholders, make it easier, make it simpler. So I think that we really can improve this international partnership. And with ENAT and UNWTO, I think we can do much more that we have done.
Thank you. And what would be the most important thing that really was kind of a jumping board for the National Tourism Administration to start implementing accessible tourism seriously in Portugal? What was the one most important thing for your administration?
So I think that this purpose of ours, that and we are known to be a very welcome people to all the tourists. So I'm very proud of it. I think we are international recognized by that. So we can't have this purpose really if we don't see and work every details and every differences that we say that we respect. So I think this brings us to this specific point of accessibility in tourism. And now we are realizing, as Ivor said, that we have to make bridges with all the other sectors that are not tourism, and it's very important to of course to work in tourism, to bring our stakeholders, but don't forget that tourism is at the end of a very big value chain. So
thank you very much, Teresa. And Claire, the question for you would be, how do you deal with the professional level of services and the extent of professionalism that is recognized for accessibility experts in your sector when it comes to SMEs? Because we've got a question yesterday from one of the persons that couldn't join us today beforehand, that there has been a surge of Instagrammers who have disability or not, and who sell themselves as accessibility experts. So how do you really distinguish the good apples from the rotten apples nowadays when you want to contract services by accessibility experts and you need to pay for that? How do you make sure that your service is going to be professional and also relied on the previous experience of the person providing that service? How do you make sure?
Sure, that's a really good question, but I would always put it back to the operator or the service provider to ask them what does their business exist to do and what are they trying to achieve. So, just thinking, like, going back to that very foundation of the experience that they're trying to create for everyone, can that influencer or that person meet that need? So it goes back to, why are you in this industry, and so, as the point I made in my presentation is about that meaningful experience. So if you think that person is going to marry up with, communicating to a bigger audience, that experience that you want people to have, then, they might be a good fit. But essentially, we need to motivate and support these, all these service providers to do better. They need to be doing it for the right reasons, and, stop feeling so overwhelmed that it's too hard to be, accessible and inclusive, that they really can make a difference, one step at a time. And one of the best things they can do is open up those communication channels and listen to, what people are asking and requiring from them. So, and being honest, meeting those expectations is a huge thing. Because sometimes you just can't. Sometimes you absolutely cannot meet, maybe some mobility challenges or whatnot. So just being honest, but picking up that call and having, a real conversation with that person to see, whether you can work it out, and stop saying no just because you always have. Really think about, is this something I could do? Or, maybe next time, you can achieve that. So we want operators to feel empowered and, but still be true to the reason that they started their business.
Thank you so much. Marnie, are you with us here? Is Ottawa so isolated that you couldn't get connected again? So I guess Marnie is not with us. There was a question whether she has worked with the Rick Hansen Foundation in Canada, that is one of the cutting edge foundations in Canada that has a lot of investment in accessible tourism and accessibility in general in built environments and other also sectors of the human activity. So I guess we didn't have Marnie with us. Let me just finish with just 3 minutes of closing remarks today based on this discussion. And what can we really take away from this event today? We have seen today that the recent global shocks have made us realize that advocating for inclusiveness, accessibility, and diversity has to do a lot with tourism. It has to do a lot with all of us. The pandemic coincided with the launch of new policy instruments that can serve as a guidance to our sector. We understood that the new ISO standard or the new UNWTO guides on reopening tourism are not about labels stating, I fully comply with this. They can be used in so many different ways. We have seen today that all key players need to sit together to draft policies and strategies on accessible tourism. The design of products and experiences should be data-driven and inspired by the real market research. Our audience has learned also that the whole accessible tourism experience should happen in beautiful and welcoming environments designed for all kinds of customers. People forget medical facilities that our lives take us to, and many of us today have had this personal experience. But what we do keep is the reminiscences of our travel experiences, the spaces and the sensations that made us feel good. Making destinations accessible now is also paving the way for the future, spaces where both locals and visitors can spend some quality time throughout their lives, from toddlers to a very advanced senior age. When we are told that something is simply not accessible, we should ask, what is so unique about it that it justifies exclusion of millions of users? Is it its exceptional artistic or its intrinsic landscape value, or simply keeping the status quo and avoiding investing and innovating? We have seen from the private sector today that inclusion drives innovation and leads to service quality and business success. Accessibility put in place and the real respect for human diversity in our industry create an environment of belonging for both staff and customers. New employment and revenue streams and clients' loyalty are just the direct consequences and part of this picture. Changing our mindset and understanding the business case of accessibility are still the key challenges. That's why the training is a must. It needs to involve the executives, the mid-management, and the front desk staff, our first human contact on the other side of the counter. An increased awareness of the client's abilities also gives us the confidence and more capacities to create meaningful experiences for all. Involving the end user and qualified experts in designing the accessibility value chain is key. Listening to this community is critical. Nothing about us without us, what Apurva said. This is the correct approach to avoid mistakes. We have also heard today that national strategies work if they focus on specific territories and also specific types of service providers. It is a joint work of all key players. It is better coordinated if we set it up through properly staffed accessible tourism observatories, ad hoc committees, or even institutionalized agencies for the follow-up actions, depending on the resources of each entity. A way to trigger the industry's buy-in of accessibility beyond implementing legislation and standards is also through access to financing. Those businesses that improve accessibility can have a better access to funding, recovery packages, and also get awarded and publicly recognized for their good work. They need to inspire their peers by showcasing their own success stories. Una vez más, voy a pasarme al español. Quisiera agradecer a todos nuestros participantes hispanohablantes por haberse unido a este webinar, a este seminar hoy y haber compartido todo este tiempo con nosotros. Nos hemos pasado un poco más allá del tiempo asignado, que era 1 hora y media, pero creo que había preguntas y aportaciones muy interesantes. Entonces, muchas gracias. Thank you very much for all your contributions. And I hope to see you in our future UNWTO events on accessibility. Thank you all. Thank you, Arva, for moderating. Thank you to the interpreters, to the technical teams, accessibility features, and also our IT support from UNWTO. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Gracias. Thank you.
Gracias. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Enhorabuena.
Gracias. Thank you so much. Cheers. Bye-bye.